Did you know you can program two separate IceCap Gyre pumps to work together and create more intricate flow patterns? Stay tuned to find out. Hello and welcome to another episode of CVtv. My name is Carlos and I will be your host for today. In this final episode of our IceCap Gyre interface module video series, we will create an advanced program that will allow us to synchronize two IceCap Gyre pumps using two IceCap modules. We will begin by placing two pumps horizontally on each side of our tank. Then, we will alternate flow patterns so that as one pump's intensity goes up, the opposite pumps goes down. By synchronizing our pumps to run complementing flows, we will be able to create the ultimate forward and reverse gyre pattern. This video is not for beginners, and some background experience in key products will help you get up and running quicker. If you have not done so, I recommend watching our previous videos, IceCap Gyre Interface Module Apex Controller Setup and IceCap Gyre Interface Module Alternating Gyre Mode. While not required for this video, they do cover some basic terms and programming that will definitely help you and make this video easier to follow. This video also assumes that you already have a working Apex controller. Your Apex should also have an open variable speed port, and you should be familiar with the creation of virtual and regular outlets. If you have not configured your Apex controller, a really good place to start is Neptune Systems' website. They have an amazing website full of support articles, videos, as well as a support forum with a thriving community of experienced staff and fellow Apex users. You can visit them at www.neptunesystems.com. You will also need to have two IceCap modules connected to your Apex controller using a single Y cable. Let's get ready for IceCap Gyre Interface Module, Sync and Anti-Sync.
This is the classic interface for the Apex controller. Here you can view your tank stats as well as configure your outlets and profiles. For those of you that are already asking why are we using the classic interface instead of the Apex Fusion, this is due to the fact that in this video we will be creating and using virtual outlets, and at the time of this video there is no way to create them using Apex Fusion. As I mentioned earlier, this video is not for beginners, so if you have not watched our previous video, IceCap Gyre Interface Module Apex Controller Setup and IceCap Gyre Interface Module Alternating Gyre Mode, I recommend checking them out first and then coming back and continuing. The videos are not required, but they do cover basic programming that will make this video easier to follow. Our goal for this video is to create a complete flow schedule using two gyres placed horizontally on opposite sides of our tank. We will create a combination of profiles, virtual and regular outlets to allow both pumps to work together to create some amazing flow patterns. We will create ramp up and ramp down profiles that can be used by both pumps in offsetting times. During the morning hours, while one pump ramps up, the other will ramp down. Then, midway through the day, we will change the flow and have the pumps pulse and create crashing waves in the middle of the tank. In the afternoon, we will have the pumps return to offsetting ramp up and ramp down, and during the night, we will use the same ramp up and ramp down motion but at a much slower frequency and reduced intensity to give our corals and fish a break. The first thing we need to do is create the profiles. As we covered in a previous video, profiles can be looked at as different flow patterns. Their purpose is to tell the pump how to run. They are not meant to tell the pump when to run. This is something done by the schedule on the outlets, but mainly to instruct the pump on what pattern to run to create a particular flow. We will need a total of 5 different profiles. A ramp up profile and a ramp down profile for the day, a pulsing profile to be used during the early afternoon, and then finally a ramp up profile and a ramp down profile for nighttime. So let's go ahead and create our profiles. To do this, let's hover over Configuration and then Profile Setup. We'll choose our first available profile. The name of the profile will be day_up because this is the ramp up profile during the day. Our ramp up time, we're going to set it up as 1 minute. Our start intensity is going to be 25%. And our end intensity is going to be 85%. And I'm setting it at 25% intensity because I know that the pump has a bottom. The pumps cannot run anything below 20 or 22%. So this is a safe number to start. And the end intensity is going to be 85%. So this pump is going to ramp up from 25% intensity up to 85% intensity within a minute. Let's go ahead and scroll down, update to save. So the next profile we're going to create is going to be the day down profile. So let's click on profile and find the next available one. And let's change the name to day_down. Control type is going to be ramp. Our ramp time is going to be the same as the ramp up profile or the day up profile, so it's going to be 1 minute. Our start intensity, since we are ramping down, is going to be 85%, and our end intensity is going to be 25%. So basically what this pump is going to do is going to start at 85% speed, and it's going to reduce to 25% speed during 1 minute. And as you can already tell, the ramp up profile will be running on the left pump or the right pump, whichever you choose, while the opposite profile, which is the day down profile, will be running on the opposite pump. Let's go ahead and scroll down, update to save, and now we're done with our ramp up and ramp down profiles for the day. Our third profile will be the pulsing profile, which will be used during the early afternoon. Our schedule calls for both pumps to pulse at the same time, creating crashing waves in the middle of our tank. So let's go ahead and create that profile by clicking on profile and finding the next available slot. Alright, we're going to call this one day_pulse. The control type is going to change this time around. We're actually going to choose pump. Synchronize is going to stay not enabled. Divide by 10 is not enabled. Our initial off time is going to be 0 because we want the profile to start immediately. Our on time is going to be 10 seconds, so I'll leave it as 10 right now. And our off time is going to be 10 seconds. Our minimum intensity will be 25%, and our maximum intensity is going to be 70%. So this profile is going to make the pump pulse at 70% for 10 seconds, and then at 25% for the next 10 seconds, and repeat. Let's go ahead and scroll down and make sure that we update to save. The last two profiles that we will be creating are the night profiles. Remember, our schedule calls for ramp up and ramp down during the night, but at a much lower frequency and lesser intensity. To do this, let's click on profile. Let's find the next available space, and then let's change the name to night_up for our ramp up. Control type is going to be ramp. Our ramp time is going to be 3 minutes this time around. Our start intensity is going to be 25%, and our end intensity is going to be 40%. Again, I want a much lower frequency, 3 minutes instead of 1 minute, and less intensity. So instead of 85 and 25, I'm doing 40 and 25%. Let's scroll down to save. And then let's go ahead and create the next profile, which will be our night down profile. Let's rename this to night_down. Let's change the control type to ramp. And then our ramp time is going to be 3 minutes. Our start intensity is going to be 40%. And our end intensity is going to be 25%. And again, we're ramping down. So let's scroll down and update. The next step is to create virtual outlets. A virtual outlet is an outlet that exists only within the Apex programming, but does not have a physical presence. There is no EB8 or module that has a physical representation of the outlet. Virtual outlets are used mainly as switches that virtually turn on and off and run together with regular physical outlets to create more complex schedule patterns that cannot be achieved by just using regular outlets and profiles. We are creating a virtual switch that will run a profile when on and a different profile when off. If we use our pumps as example, if our virtual outlet is on, the left pump will run the day up profile while the right pump will run the day down profile. And when the virtual outlet turns off, our left pump will run the day down profile and our right pump will run the day up profile. This process will repeat at whatever rate we set the virtual outlet to turn on and turn off. So, we will need to create two virtual outlets, one for the day and one for the night. To create our virtual outlets, we'll have to hover into configuration and then module setup. Now, the Apex doesn't have an easy way to add a virtual outlet. In essence, what you need to do is you need to fake the Apex into thinking that it has a power strip or a module in order to add virtual outlets. So what we're going to do is we're going to have the Apex add a virtual EB4 to our configuration, so we end up with 4 virtual outlets. So we're going to scroll down to add modules, and we're going to select Direct Connect 4 or EB4. Let's go ahead and add module. Now that the page has refreshed, you can see that if we scroll down, the Apex module list does not have an EB4 listed. And that's because this list only has physical modules. But if we scroll up, hover over configuration and then outlet setup, and then click on outlet, you can see at the bottom of our list 4 virtual outlets created that were not there before, and those are the outlets that we will be using. So now let's go ahead and create our virtual outlet. To do this, click on the outlet list and let's find the first outlet that we created. Now you see right here the outlets have light 1 F1 name, light 2 pump 1 pump 2. Those are just default names. We can change them to whatever we want. Let's click on the first outlet and let's immediately change the name to VIRT_day. Our control type is going to be advanced. Our icon is going to be up and down arrow. The log is going to be disabled, and let's go ahead and clear the advanced window. Now the first thing we need to do is set the default action for this outlet. This is what's going to run the outlet 24/7 unless we tell it otherwise. For the default, we're going to do the following: OSC 000:00. So 3 zeros followed by 2. /001:00. Then / again 001:00, then on. And what this line means is that the pump is going to oscillate with a 0 delay. So it's going to start right away, and then it's going to oscillate for 1 minute on. The first 3 digits are minutes, the last 2 digits are seconds, and then 1 minute off. And the reason why the second set of digits is on is because of the command that I put last. If I had specified off last, that means the second set of numbers means off for 1 minute, and the third set of numbers means on for a minute. So now that we've established what the outlet is going to do 24/7, let's go ahead and establish some rules that will tell the outlet not to do the oscillation 24/7. So we're going to enter to start the next line, and we're going to type if time 13:00 to 14:00, then off. And what this means is that the pump is going to oscillate 1 minute on and 1 minute off. But if the time is between 1 o'clock p.m. and 2 o'clock p.m., then turn this virtual outlet off. Then let's go ahead and add another line. Click enter, and we're going to type if time 22:00 to 08:00, then off. And what this means is that it's going to oscillate on and off except between 1 o'clock and 2 o'clock p.m. or between 10 p.m. and 8 o'clock in the morning, at which time it's going to be off. And the reason why we're doing is because we only want this outlet to be functioning during the day. Let's scroll down to the bottom, hit update outlet, and we've created our first virtual outlet. So let's go ahead and create our second outlet. Click on the list of outlets and let's select the next available empty outlet. Let's change the name to VIRT_night. And this is the outlet that is going to dictate the frequency of the pumps during the night. Our control type is going to be advanced. Our icon is going to be up and down. We'll leave the log disabled. And again, let's clear this programming, which is the default programming. And the first thing we need to do is set the default. What is this pump going to do 24/7? So we're going to type OSC, oscillate, 000:00. So no delay, start immediately. Then 003:00, so 3 minutes on or off. I haven't specified that yet because I haven't gotten to that point on the line. Then /003:00. Again, this is going to be on or off depending on what I type next. Then on. So what this line means, oscillate with an immediate start, 3 minutes on and then 3 minutes off. So now that we've created the default for the 24/7 time, let's go ahead and create the exceptions. So let's type the following. If time 08:00 to 22:00, then off. And what this means is that if the time is between 8 in the morning and 10 p.m., I want you to turn this outlet off. So let's go ahead and scroll down, update, and now we've created our virtual night outlet. Now that we have created our virtual outlets in our profiles, it is time to create our schedule. So to do this, we're going to grab the outlet where our gyre is connected. In my case, my right side gyre is connected to my variable speed 1. So let's grab variable speed 1. Let's change the name to XF130_right because it's my gyre that is on the right side of the tank. The control is advanced. The icon, let's make it left and right. Let's leave the log enable, and the advanced setup, let's clear it up. Now, the schedule is a little complex, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste the entire code into the window, and then we're going to go over what each line means. So, the first 4 lines of my code are the default value. This is what the pump is going to run at particular times. Between 8 and 1, the profile day up. Between 1 and 2, it's going to run profile day pulse. Between 2 and 10 p.m., it's going to run profile day up again. And between 10 p.m. and 8 a.m., it's going to run profile night. And it's going to do it over and over and over again. So if it's 8 o'clock in the morning to 1 o'clock p.m., it's going to run the day up profile for 1 minute because that's what we specified the day up profile to be. And then immediately after that minute, it's going to run the day up profile again for a minute, and so forth. Now that we have the default values running, the virtual outlet comes into play to tell the pump to do something else besides the default value. So let's take a look at the last 2 lines, and the last 2 lines are my virtual outlets, the virtual outlets that turn on and off. So this line means if outlet vert day. Now remember, the outlet name must be the same as the one that you typed in, otherwise you'll get an error. It is case sensitive. So if virtual day outlet is on, then run day down profile. But when the switch is off, then the pump will revert back to the default value, which is day up. So now you created a pump that for 1 minute is going to do day up, and then for another minute it's going to do day down. Take a look at the second line. If time is 1300 hours to 1400 hours, so if time is between 1 and 2 p.m., then do day pulse. This is where we want the 2 pumps to do the same thing so that water crashes in the middle of the tank. There's no virtual outlet because they're both going to do the same pulsing at the same exact time, and the reason why is because we want the water to crash in the middle. So there is no need to have a on and off switch. So let's move on to the third line. If time is 1400 hours or 2 p.m. to 10 p.m., then do day up. Now notice again, this is just like the first line. If the virtual outlet day is on, then do day down. When the virtual outlet is off, then revert back to the day up profile. Then the last line, if time is 2200 hours to 10 p.m. to 8 a.m., then do the night up profile. But then we have a virtual outlet during the night that is going to switch on and off. So the virtual outlet says that if virtual outlet night is equal to on, then do night down profile. But when the outlet is off, then do night up profile. Before we forget, the last thing we need to do to complete this gyre right outlet is to set up the feed so that when the feed mode is enabled, the pump turns off. And to do this, we're going to create a new line. If feed A 000, then off. Now we can go ahead and resave the outlet. So let's go ahead and go to outlets, and let's go to variable speed 2 because that's where I have my left side pump. You may have it on a different outlet. For our purposes in this video, I have the left side pump on variable speed 2 outlet. So we're going to call it immediately XF130_left. Control type is going to be advanced. My icon is going to be left and right arrows. Log is going to be enabled, And let's go ahead and clear our advanced setup. And I'm going to do the same thing. I already have the code typed, so I'm just going to paste it here, and then we're going to go over it. Paste. Just like the first outlet, first 4 lines set the default profile. So between 8 and 1, it's going to go day down. Between 1 and 2, it's going to do day pulse. Between 2 and 10, it's going to do day down. And between 10 and 8 in the morning, it's going to do night down. Remember, we want the pumps to do opposites. So unlike the first outlet that we just configured, this one has to be the opposite. If the first outlet was day up during 8 and 1300 hours or 1 o'clock, then this outlet should be day down. So let's move on to the virtual outlets that modify the default values. So I have an outlet virtual day that if it's on, then do day up, the opposite. So what this means is when this outlet is on, then day up profile will run. And when the outlet turns off, then it reverts back to the default, which will be day down. So now we have the left pump that is going to do day down for 1 minute and then day up for the other minute in opposite directions to the right side pump. And then we can see that the virtual night outlet is the same. So I have a virtual night outlet that if it's on, it's going to run the night up profile, but if it's off, then it's going to revert back to the default, which is night down. The second line, which is 1 o'clock to 2 p.m. and the day pulse, again, does not need a virtual outlet because we want both pumps to do the exact same thing at the exact same time. So in this case, I want both pumps to turn on and pulse at the same frequency at the same time to create the crashing wave in the middle. The last thing we're going to do is add the feed line. So if feed A 000, then off. And this means that if you press the feed button, this outlet will automatically turn off. So now let's go ahead and save. And now we have our schedule completed. So the last thing we need to do is go back to the dashboard. We're going to scroll down and then make sure that our outlets are in automatic. So let's turn our XF130 right to automatic, and let's turn our XF130 left to automatic. So now we have 2 pumps that work together to create a schedule that from 8 o'clock in the morning till 1 o'clock p.m. one pump is going to ramp up and the opposite pump is going to ramp down for 1 minute and then switch. Then from 1 o'clock p.m. till 2 o'clock p.m. both pumps are going to run the same pulsing at the same time, so water crashes in the middle of our tank and creates chaos. Then from 2 o'clock p.m. until 10 o'clock p.m. the pumps are going to revert back to the ramp up and ramp down on opposite directions. And then from 10 p.m. until 8 a.m. the pumps are going to ramp up and down at a slower frequency and much lower intensity to give our corals and our fish a break.
Hey everybody, and thank you for watching. I hope this video was helpful and you got a good understanding on how to synchronize 2 gyre pumps. Use the information you learned as a starting point to create more profiles and more complex schedules. If you would like more information on the IceCap Gyre interface module, check out the link below. If you have any technical questions that you wish to ask, please head over to www.coralvue.com/support and submit a support ticket. If you have any comments or tips to share with fellow reefers, feel free to leave them in the area below. If this is your first time joining us, hit the subscribe button as every week we release a new video related to reefing. Thank you again for watching CVtv, and see you next time.